Raj, I've heard you so many times. I think this is your best. Outstanding, this one. I think we should give him a big hand. I think. Yeah. Talking about digestion. Now, recently in India, these conversions coming called inculturation, right? And is this another form of digestion? They follow now Mary Mata festival. They break coconut like Hindus. They put garlands. Now they call even the Devalayam, Christ to Devalayam. Everything, they are imitating Hindus. And this is another form of digestion?
Yes. The way digestion works is that the predator wants to remove and minimize the differences between his views and his style and the other side to create a comfort zone. So it is that, okay, I'm not different, I'm not European, I'm not English speaking, I'll speak Tamil and I'll speak Hindi and I'll wear dhoti and I'll do these things and I'll have women have bindi also and all of this stuff. And so to make you culturally comfortable, and this idea is that outwardly we are like you, but we have a different chip inside. So it's biblical Nicene Creed inside that chip. But outwardly we'll break the coconut, we'll do all the things that make you happy. You want us to take off our shoes in the church, we'll take off our shoes. You want to serve a sacred food to Mother Mary and call it prasad, you got it. Anything that doesn't violate the Nicene Creed, we will take it. What violates the Nicene Creed has to be excreted, can't be consumed, eaten up by us, otherwise it will poison the Christianity. And this inculturation is very dangerous because a whole lot of our people are getting duped into it. They're getting duped into it. And our gurus who've said everything is same means that, you can't even argue there's something wrong with it because they'll say it's the same. I have a relative who had some economic problems, very well educated. He used to work for Lucent in New Jersey. Very, smart guy, highly educated. He had some economic problems and family marital problems and all kinds of things. And, ours is not a very community oriented where people get together and help somebody. So he was sort of left on his own. And then these problems worsened and people said he's talking weird. And I was the only guy who could figure out there's some kind of a religious thing going on in his head, a religious shift in his head. And he would come to these Indian marriage events wearing the collar like a priest, Christian priest, we're carrying the Bible, reading it out. And then he would say it's the same as Gita, don't worry. All our people were saying don't worry, he's just saying it's all the same anyway. That's our people saying. And one day, we were at somebody's birthday party at a restaurant, a long table, a lot of people sitting. This guy was there. So I looked at him straight in the eyes and I said, so when did you get baptized? That was my question. I just guessed that I probably am on the right track. And he gave a date. He said, February such and such I got baptized. All the people around were shocked. They said, how did you know? Later they asked me. I said, I could tell. So I didn't sound like I have a problem with this guy. I didn't want to create a scene. So I kept asking, wonderful, which denomination? So he gave me the name of the denomination. Then I started discussing the philosophy. And I said, do you read out the Nicene Creed? He said, yeah, we read out every day. And all that he was telling me. And then he came to my house for a private discussion because he thought maybe Rajiv got me figured out and I'll talk to him and maybe we'll be together. Maybe he thought he'll convert me also, So when we're having this private discussion, I said that, your kids are complaining, your wife is complaining, you're now disconnected with their tradition, your parents, haven't even told them, so they'll also be wondering, so why? So he says, since I was born, I was a kid, everyone told me it's all the same. This was his answer. He says, why are my parents going to complain? Every time I go, they say, sir, beta, we believe in all the things, everybody's same, so now I'll tell them that we are all the same, what's your problem? This was his answer. And half the Indians in our gathering, in that group, all these Indians are Hindus, half of them said, actually we agree with you, what is wrong? What is wrong? So we got really confused people. Until you can get into the cause of the problem, which is the importance of being different. What is your identity? Who are you? Why that matters? Unless you understand that, it's a losing battle. Because you can keep arguing all you want about preserving tradition and all that, but they don't get it. They think that, okay, if my kids grow up and, mosque is just another path. All paths lead to the same goal. Truth is one called by many names. We heard that this morning also. So this confusion is the cause that we can never get mobilized.
First of all, thank you very much for a very, very enlightening lecture. And the question is in two parts. The first one is, do you think the rate of digestion is higher in India or outside India in terms of Hinduism as a religion? And the second question is, which institutions or groups you think would play the most viable role in stopping it or in reducing its acceleration?
Thank you. This is a wonderful question. Honestly, the Hindus in India and the Hindus in the US are competing for who gets digested faster. Yeah, really. I mean, this is very true. And it is very sad. And when I'm giving talks there, they're saying, but this must be a problem of NRIs. They tell me that. And when I give talks here, people saying, no, you should talk to India, this is their problem. Point is, we got this problem universally. We do. Now, the second part is a very important question. Both are important. Second part, which institutions can help us? For the last 18 to 20 years, gave up my business and all that in my mid-40s to spend all my time in this, all my resources, 7 days a week, and I don't have many resources left. I need, in fact, people to help with the resources, more research, media, whatever. If anybody is interested, you should contact me. But my feeling is, where I'm trying all the institutions I can that are willing to listen. Any temple, anybody, I go flying around every week where somebody wants to bring me to educate people. And I'm finding that the highest leverage, see, there's 3 or 4 target groups with leverage that I'm targeting. The most important group I would like to shift is our gurus, because they already got the money, they already got lakhs of followers. I neither have the money nor the lakhs of followers. They have it, but they don't have the knowledge because they forgot the Purva Paksha. Whenever I talk to somebody who says he knows it, I ask them, have you done Purva Paksha of Western thought? I don't mean dismissal, attack on Christianity, but a very thoughtful study. Like in the past, the Hindus studied Buddhism very carefully, Buddhists studied Vedanta very carefully. Purva Paksha meant that you can explain the arguments of your opponents as well as the opponent can explain it. That is the starting point. You, in the Purva Paksha system of debate, until you can convince the opponent that you've got his point, all his arguments, all the subtleties, until he is impressed that you really got it, you're not allowed to criticize him and give a response because you don't understand, and what you don't understand you cannot criticize. That standard of Purva Paksha would require our people to study Western thought very, very carefully, very systematically. They would need a 4-year comparative religion course, which none of them have. They would have to hire a lot of people with PhDs in religious studies and Western Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment, which they don't even know about. I went to some of the prominent Hindu sampradayas and well-known organizations, and one of my favorite questions is, when you are training new swamis, they have a academy to train new swamis, like Belur Mutt for Ramakrishna Mission and Siddhabari for Chinmaya Mission, like that everyone has. One of my favorite questions is, what is your curriculum on comparative religion? And they all say things like, truth is inside me, why should I worry about others? We are not trying to knock down anybody. Or they'll say, they're all useless, they know nothing, we have the truth, they are just all useless, so why should we study them? They don't get it. They don't get the importance of doing the study of the other. So a huge opportunity for me is to penetrate the gurus and acharyas, those who are interested. Some of them are threatened by me because they think what I'm saying will make it look like they themselves are ignorant. So I have tried to get into the door to have a one-on-one meeting with a top guy, many places. If anyone can get me with Jaggi Vasudev, his bodyguards around him are protecting him, not wanting to access, Sri Sri, even though I know him. A lot of these gurus, they feel that, in their whole name they've made based on a huge international clout. The point is that if you really start poking into the details, they have a kind of superficial knowledge. They really don't understand the Purva Paksha of the West. And when they argue why should we study the West and all that, I tell them that your tradition is to study the other, that is called Purva Paksha. It's just that for the last 1,000 years, since Islam came, we didn't do Purva Paksha. Since Christianity came, we didn't do Purva Paksha. When Marxism and Enlightenment and all these Western, secularism came, we did not do proper Purva Paksha, and we are paying the price. Without Purva Paksha, our tradition would have died to the Buddhists also long ago. We did Purva Paksha, the methodology of understanding the other on our terms and being able to answer him and create the difference, understanding difference, being different, so that we don't get digested. Purva Paksha is our methodology. It's a very solid Hindu methodology, and our people need to get back into that. So if there's one thing I want to do, I want to establish a tradition, revive a tradition of Purva Paksha in our sampradayas, in our guru lineages, and Purva Paksha not of Buddhists because they're not threatening us, Purva Paksha of Western thought, Purva Paksha of Islamic thought is what we have to do. Maoist thought, we have to do Purva Paksha on our terms and how to answer back. Yeah. So to me, those institutions of religion, of our dharmic centers would be the most important. Then I'm trying to get into academics. I'm trying, because that's where the college people are brainwashed. And academics both in the US and in India keep having talks and put them up on YouTube and so on. Academics would be a great thing. And then, organizations like this, where at least the people are already into Dharma. Now they need to learn Purva Paksha. So people who come here, I don't have to explain to them and argue for Dharma. They already are. I just have to explain to them, educate them about the Purva Paksha of the other civilizations, how to talk back, how to answer back, how to explain our side to them. So that's a very good one. Media would be fantastic, but I don't know how to get in. They don't want a guy like me because I'm not Shah Rukh Khan and I'm not some cricket guy and I'm not into some political scandal and I'm not, I'm not the kind of gossip masala which they're looking for. So their attention span is a few seconds and I have nothing to say in a few seconds.
Raju, congratulations and thanks for all the exposition. My question is, as you are telling, I don't see the Western, what is that word? Western universalism. Yeah, Western universalism, in my opinion, it is borrowed from Dharmic civilization. But anyway, one thing is now you can look at the humanity as one race. So unless we develop our own universalism, universal values, it is difficult to coexist or live together all the humanity under one umbrella. So what is your solution to, you figure it out the solution or the universal counter to the Western universalism, only Dharmic universalism, it is the answer. I mean, you have ideas on that, please?
So I'll restate the question. He says several things. One is that Western universalism is derived from our ideas. Maybe, maybe not, doesn't matter. You could say the tiger is strong because he's eaten all the deer only. That's why he's strong, but that doesn't help the deer. If he's eating me up, it doesn't help me to say, I'm safe with him because he's tough and strong because he's eaten deer only. However he became strong is irrelevant. The fact is he's strong and he wants to eat me up. That's what matters, not how he became strong. Right? So maybe Western universalism ate up all kind of people. They ate up pagans also, and Native Americans also. They colonized blacks also. It's not like they only did it from us. They took over many others. But how they did it is irrelevant. The point is they're knocking at my door and they like to get me. That's what matters. Now, the real question you asked is, if humanity is to live as one, we need a coexistence architecture. We need an open architecture where all civilizations and cultures and diversity can coexist. The Western universalism does not have a track record of diversity surviving. For a little while, yes, but eventually, after a certain amount of time goes by, their language is gone, destroyed, their dress and lifestyle is destroyed, it all gets digested into Western universalism. You just have to look at the past. India, on the other hand, has a very long history of a universalism which respects the diversity of others, because when they come, they do not, the Syrian Christians did not stop being Syrian Christians, or Zoroastrians did not stop being Zoroastrians, the people of different languages and different kind of tradition did not stop. Now you have to ask, why is it, this is a question that all of you, I have answered in this book, but it's homework assignment I'm giving you, you should read the book to answer this question. Why is it that when there is change in Western religion, the previous one has to be destroyed for the next one to be valid? Yeah? Like when you install Windows 8, then they have to uninstall Windows 7. Yeah? They can't have both running. Whereas, we may have a rat temple from way back, nobody has gone and said you must convert and get rid of that and upgrade to the next release. So we can have people doing Tantra, we can have people doing Advaita, we can have somebody bhakti of one and somebody bhakti of another. We have people of many strata, many historical times, old faiths, new faiths, newer faiths, and yet they are all coexisting. Why is it that in our case, for the new release to be valid, they don't want you to uninstall the previous release? That can also live in you. Very interesting. Very interesting. Even in the same family, you may be practicing something which is kind of a new kind of a thing that is evolved in our dharma, and your mother may be practicing something else, your grandmother may be practicing something else. Nobody is going to say that you must make everything uniform and bring it all in line. One. This is a very important question answered philosophically, why for the other side it is necessary to have this uniformity, one, no diversity of views allowed. Why can't I have an Ishta Devta of this kind, that kind, that kind in those religions? Even among themselves. Why isn't there, like we have so many unified temples like this one, where so many Devtas, why couldn't you put Mary and then put something about the Kaaba and then put some Jesus, Star of David? And even among the Abrahamic religions, why couldn't you have a unified house of worship? You can't. There is a philosophical reason why the validity of X, the legitimacy of X, requires falsifying Y. You have to falsify Y, otherwise you're not legitimate. This is not an easy, it's not that they're bad guys. This is a requirement by edict. Requirement. You must understand it very detailed. So pluralism and multiculturalism within Western universalism is a facade. Within the Western secularism, you can tolerate others. Tolerance is an insult. Tolerance means you're no good, but I'll put up with you. You're going to hell, but you know what, I'll put up with you. It's an insult if somebody says, I'll tolerate you to have dinner next to me. Sit next to me and you can eat dinner, I'll tolerate you. What an insult. You'll say, what's wrong with me? Why you have to tolerate me? Our term is mutual respect. Mutual respect for difference is a very different concept than tolerance. When you ask a Christian, what is your policy on pluralism? What is your policy on those who are not Christians, who are doing something different? And they will say with great pride and say, oh, we have a policy of tolerance. They'll say that. You say, yeah, but in your office, would you like someone to say, I tolerate you next to me? In your house, suppose your spouse says, I tolerate you in the house. It's an insult. It's an insult. I'll have many stories I'll give you some stories very interesting. I was invited to a major university in California starting a world religions center, and they wanted a member of each religion to come, and they wanted to declare peace and harmony and have dialogues. This was in the 1990s. So they put me on the board of advisors as the Hindu, and when they were launching this event, this place, all the dean came and vice chancellor and provost, all these guys were there. So they were all giving speeches. And they had drafted a resolution that all these religions that are represented hereby pledge to have tolerance towards each other. So when it was my turn, I proposed, I was the only guy who actually disagreed. They all agreed and they all clapped. I said that I would like to request one change, remove the word tolerance and put in the word mutual respect. I said the difference is, if I respect you are legitimate. If I merely tolerate you, I feel you are no good, you are evil, you are going to hell, but I'll put up with you. And I want mutual respect. Now this created a big stir. after this, I had to leave for personal reason. I came back home. I got a call from this lady who was head of this whole organization. She called me and she said, Rajiv, you really created a big commotion. I said, what did I do? He said, you asked for this mutual respect. And now they're all debating whether we can do it or not. So I went and told this to Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Arshividya Gurukulam. Many of you probably know him. He said, that's a good idea. We should want mutual respect. So then, year 2000 was the United Nations declared a Millennium Summit. Some of you might remember. All the leaders of all the world religions were invited by the United Nations. Baba Jain was head of that group, and under Kofi Annan they were going to declare world peace, and all the religions will have harmony and whatnot. And this millennium will be the millennium of peace. That's what's going to happen. So there was a resolution which had been drafted, and in the resolution it said that we all declare tolerance for each other. So Swami Dayananda Saraswati, since everybody had to approve, he crossed out and put mutual respect. And then the Vatican guy, when he would get it, he would cross it out and put tolerance. And this went on. And New York Times reported that there is a serious risk, there's a deadlock of language, some technical language, people are quibbling, they didn't give details. And therefore there's a real risk that the summit may collapse without a resolution, and it will be a big embarrassment for United Nations. So this went on, and they kept putting pressure on Swamiji. Swamiji dug his heels and said, no, I want mutual respect. Tolerance is not good enough. So at the 11th hour, the Vatican blinked and they passed the resolution with mutual respect. And everybody thought, wow, which is very great. But the stories didn't end there. About a month later, after everybody's gone back to their home, the Vatican issues a clarification, official. And the head of the Vatican delegation was Cardinal Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict, the current Pope. So it's not a small fry. He was a big shot even then. He was head of Vatican's external affairs, anything to do with the outside world, interfaith and whatever. He was the head of that. Then he later became Pope, and they changed his name to Pope Benedict. He was called Cardinal Ratzinger. He's the one. So he's the one who ultimately signed, and he's the one who then issued a clarification a month later. Clarification was that there are certain aspects of all religions we can respect, but ultimate salvation can only be done through the church. Which means, going back to the Nicene Creed, the Christian good news of the Savior is the only way to save. Others can take you from kindergarten to 5th grade to 10th grade, high school, but if you really want to go to the highest level, the PhD level, the ultimate level of being saved, you have to come through us. So they had to sign, but then they had to clarify what they mean by respect and to qualified respect. And then came 9/11 in 2001. And after 9/11, the Muslims in US were suddenly very shaken up because a lot of attacks on them. Suddenly there was this Hindu-Muslim bye-bye going on. Muslims very interested, we all one and all that. Suddenly. So I was invited by some people in Dallas to speak on all this religious stuff and all, harmony. And a radio station which was owned by a Pakistani, South Asian radio station, they interviewed me, and then they had callers calling with questions. So I explained mutual respect, that I believe in mutual respect, not tolerance. So this lady calls. Later I was told she's a well-known activist, Pakistani activist, big community leader in Dallas. At the time I didn't know who she is. So she calls and says, Rajiv ji, congratulations, welcome to Dallas. On behalf of all the Muslim community, I want to thank you for your great statement about mutual respect, and I tell you, we Muslims really believe in mutual respect also. Okay? Very good. So you see, this is where most Hindus would not take it further. You have to push it further. So I said, I'm very glad that you respect me, and I'll explain what all my faith entails that you are respecting. And I mentioned all the things that they are banned from doing. So I So I said, I'm very glad that you respect me. So let me explain that my faith, I do worship images. We believe in karma and reincarnation, not eternal paradise or hell after one birth. And the divine can be also worshipped as feminine. So she hung up. You see, I had to call her bluff. So this is the point, the tradition of mutual respect. I always tell when I'm arguing with the theologians from Christianity and Jesuits, which are doing all the time. Hindus are afraid of doing this, but I have enough Purvapaksha on them, I can do it. So when they say, when we are talking about how open-minded they are, this and that, I always make offers which they can't accept. This is a strategy. You make an offer which is very equal. I'm doing this for you, I'm giving you $20, you give me $20. Now you can't say no to that, right? So I say these kind of offers. So I say, for example, I'll get you a Hindu community and a temple where we'll have a quid pro quo, reciprocal relationship with your church. We will install Jesus as an Ishta Devata, and in your church you will install our deities as divine. Will you do that? No way. Now, I can go on, but to save time, I'll just refer you. You go to my website of this book, www.beingdifferentbook.com, beingdifferentbook.com. One of the tabs is called videos. When you click videos, there are two groups. One is academic events and the other is public square, non-academic events. In the public square, one of the videos is with my 1.5 hour discussion with Mark Tully. Mark Tully is a famous BBC correspondent, Anglican church member, but loves India, loves Hinduism, lives in India, very great fan of Indian culture, dharma, all that. It's a 1.5 hour discussion with Mark Tully, and he's such a broad-minded guy. But the purpose of the discussion is for me to show to you, the viewers, that even a guy like that can only go so far. But there's an edge. He starts out by saying, great book, love it, but I don't like the fact that you are wanting us to be different. We should be same. So I say, okay, let's be same on my terms. You can be same as me. He sort of doesn't quite know what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you mean I have to be same as you, then you are converting me. But you can be same as me. I have no problem. So for example, let's say our deities and Jesus both are different forms of the same ultimate. That would be nice. So if a temple is willing to install Jesus, is the church willing to install our deities? And he said, well, that'll be a problem because, then we'll be accused of polytheism. I said, okay, then you can't be the same. What are you talking about? Then I go on, and then he again says, well, yeah, but again we're talking about difference, we talk about being same. So I say, okay, we have a principle of reincarnation and karma. So you accept that? Do you accept that? And he says, that will have some problem. My church is not going to. So I go on explaining a difference. He can't accept our point of view. He goes on coming back to let's be same. And then I tell him let's be same on my terms. And here is another difference. And then he can't accept that difference. And we go on and on for 1.5 hours. I really would like you to please watch that. Because that is the cutting edge of how to answer, how to talk with somebody who's being so nice, very decent gentleman, thorough, good guy. I love him as a friend. And it's not his fault because he's as broad-minded as his church membership allows him to be. And he can't be out of line with his church. It's a congregational group organization, not an individual organization, membership-oriented. You can be in violation, you can be thrown out, all that stuff. So it's not the fault of the Christians, this is the group they are in. So when we are talking about multiculturalism, I'm telling you that the multiculturalism of Christianity goes only so far. It allows you to have tolerance, it allows you to be the same on their terms, it allows you to get digested ultimately. And the multiculturalism of the secularism and the Enlightenment tradition of the West is denial of the spirituality as we understand it. So those multiculturalisms are qualified. Hindu Dharma, without wanting to put restrictions on your belief, says you come as long as you leave us alone. As long as you leave us alone, you can do whatever you want. As long as you leave us alone. This is proven by thousands of years of history. India has an unprecedented history of multiculturalism, pluralism, and all these kind of things, unparalleled in anywhere in the world. And Western universalism has an unparalleled world history of conquest, digestion, oppression, making others like them, and so on. And I don't think you can argue that this is all both the same in this respect.
Thank you very much for being here, sir. I'm learning a lot. My question is around what's happening in the last 15, 20 years in India. I'm referring to the influx of American businesses and American food, American lifestyle, American thinking. I'm curious to know your opinion, and if you can compare and contrast that with digestion, I would like to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Headlines, Starbucks has arrived in India, we're doing real well. That's kind of a headline, Starbucks come. So we are measuring ourselves. What we celebrate is that these brands have come, we are also like Americans, this kind of a thing. So I think it's a very important point. One of the digestions is aesthetics of eating, aesthetics of dress, aesthetics of music. The aesthetic realm of digestion versus difference is discussed in, I believe it's chapter 4 of this book, where the title of the chapter is Order and Chaos. It's a very profound topic on order and chaos. We didn't even touch it this today, but I explain how we cognize disorder, what they call disorder, what they call chaos. We don't see it in that way. But decentralization, ambiguity, doubt, improvisation, how comfortable we are, whereas the Western thought is very rule-based, very rule-based. So the idea of Western brands, Western corporatization, and what I call the sensex economy is a huge impact that is going to have a price in terms of diluting the dharmic civilization. The economic models we have of how an enterprise competes and how it continues from generation to generation are being taken apart. And the aesthetics we have and the choice of lifestyle, how it is changing, the role models are changing, the values are changing. This is all. And so we may end up like Philippines became a second-class Western universalist state. Contrast Philippines and China, or Philippines and Japan. Those two, China and Japan, retained their civilizational heritage, but Philippines, due to the colonial background and the way they were colonized and transformed and Christianized, they lost their music, they lost their dress, they're all wearing, Western. And so they, except for people in the villages who are poor, the more metro-oriented people, they are 50 years ahead or 75 years ahead of India in terms of becoming Americanized. So that didn't get them to be first class like Americans in terms of rights and privileges and status, and they lost it. They're neither here nor there. So the lure of Western universalism, being digested into Western universalism, makes you a second-class person in that universalism, because you are not on your own feet on the foundation that universalism has. They have understood themselves, their history, their way things work so much better that you are always an outsider. So I have completely different thoughts on what is going on and whether this 9% growth which they claim will materialize, which I don't think will materialize. It will probably problems coming along. It is not sustainable. But even if it were materialized, it will make a few people very rich. It's not going to trickle down to such a huge economy and help the lower class. So we may end up with the top 50%, 50 million, 100 million, 150 million becoming like Americans. Gas guzzling, car economy, oil and gas being used up, 70% imported, is not sustainable. So the lifestyle, which is highly sustainable in India for the Indian climate, for the Indian way of life, Indian values, you import and graft another lifestyle, it is just not possible to make Indians Americans. It is not going to be happening. So what you create is a lot of problems, because you create an expectation which you can't deliver. If you create an expectation and deliver it, that's a different matter. Then we could argue whether it's good or bad, but at least it's achievable. You cannot make... India has 9 times the population density. 3 times the population, but 1/3 the land. So 9 times or 10 times roughly the population density of United States. So with much less water, much less irrigation, and much less oil, you got so much more population. You cannot have Indians have the per capita consumption of Americans. You can't. You can keep making more roads and more roads, but let's say Indian per capita, ownership of cars, automobiles became like Americans. We'd have 10 times as many cars. We'd have to have 3 times many cars, 5 times many cars as United States, but in a small area. So the whole India would be like a parking lot. Because there's so many, you could have 20 lanes, 50 lanes, you still not have enough. So it is not sustainable and achievable to become like somebody else, because their basis is certain natural resources, certain amount of capital, certain amount of land, certain kind of population density. We do not have that, so we cannot mimic them. It's a foolish thing to do, but that's a very important thing.
Before I say my question, I would like to apologize if it's already been answered, because I came in the middle of the speech, and I'm 12, and, philosophy is a very new concept to me. And my question is, why is it bad to be digested? Because you're being digested by another religion, or a civilization, etc. And that religion still, the goal of religion is to give hope. And it still is giving hope through different people. You're just being digested by another civilization. I mean, I don't find that bad at all, because you're still getting the end result as hope with a different effect. Like Christianity gives hope, Hinduism gives hope, etc. While philosophy it achieves the same thing as hope without having deities or certain rules in some sense. So that's my question. Why is it so bad to be digested?
Good. I love these kind of questions. Very honest and it's a very important question. A lot of Indians are confused about this, and it's good to have this discussion and have back and forth debate. You see, if many people offer hope, they're not necessarily interchangeable. A lot of doctors offer hope. One may be a quack, and one may be curing you. One may be saying, I'll give you medicine A, and that'll cure you. And the other guy has a different medicine B, and he says, this will cure you. They're not interchangeable just because they're offering hope. So every brand offers hope and solution, the good life. Every car brand offers you this is the best, but doesn't mean that you don't make a choice of which car is right for you. Every song offers you enjoyment and whatnot, but that doesn't mean you don't have a preference of one song versus another. So if you have many claims, many ideas, many religions, many faiths, just because they're all offering you hope doesn't mean that they're all the same. So they may be the same. It's like many cuisines offer you good taste, good nutrition and all that, but then you still prefer dosa over, pizza or something. You want pizza over dosa. So the point I'm making is you cannot mix up the fact that everybody offers hope with the assumption that they're all offering you the same thing. They are not. And in our tradition, the Kauravas and the Pandavas were also offering hope. They both had claims of truth. The Devas and the Asuras also offering hope, offering truth. Bin Laden offering hope. Hitler offering hope. Ravana offering hope and truth. So if you start saying that all claims of hope and all the statements that claim to be truth are the same as each other, then you're going to be very confused. Then that is called moral relativism in philosophy. That means that you are not able to differentiate between one and another, and everything is just as good. It's like you would not know between a medicine that's good for you and a poison that's going to kill you, because each of them, somebody is offering it to you and claiming hope for you. So you have to take somebody's statement, some brand claim, with a pinch of salt as to whether you accept it or whether that's somebody's claim. Even though it's somebody's claim, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to accept it. Yeah? And so I just explained some very important differences. The idea of karma and reincarnation is a particular metaphysical axiom and a particular assumption. And the Nicene Creed, which is a requirement in the Christian church, refutes that, and vice versa. So there is a difference. If you have one, you cannot have the other. So if you are philosophically oriented, then you are taught to argue the differentiations among these worldviews, among these perspectives. So it's while at a very superficial level, it's become a common thing for our teachers to go around saying everything is same, all paths lead to the same, all rivers lead to the ocean. Actually, some lead to the Dead Sea also. All roads lead to the same. No, some are cul-de-sac. It's not all roads. And so all treatment plans by all doctors don't lead to the same conclusion. One guy treats this way, one guy treats that way. Different pros and cons, trade-offs in risk and reward and outcome. It's not the same. So, you cannot, we've been given the power of discrimination, differentiation and discrimination as human beings. And our tradition makes a very big deal of using that wisely, cultivating it, becoming sharp. So as a 12-year-old, as you are learning, you are sharpening your knowledge on different things and how to differentiate one versus the other. So you'll also learn how to differentiate philosophical claims. You'll also learn how to differentiate religious claims. I gave only some examples, but you have to learn how to differentiate. And that's what the book Being Different is about, teaching you how to differentiate among alternative choices that you have. But thank you for a good question.
So I think this question segues nicely from the last one, but you gave us kind of a Cliff Notes version of the differences between dharmic religions and the Judeo-Christian traditions, where with the Nicene Creed and versus karma and reincarnation. And I'm wondering if you have any advice on where to begin looking more in depth to the differences.
Well, 20 years of my own churning to understand these differences resulted in a 500-page book. So where you go in depth is you read the book. Yeah, and read it. I'll give you some advice. Do not read it as something quick. Take your time. Read a certain number of pages each day. When you come across something difficult, skip that section, go to the next section. It will be fine. It's not like if you miss a few pages then you're lost. It's not like that. Even within a chapter there are many subheadings, many sections. So if a section is very difficult, you don't have to skip the whole chapter. You can skip that section, go to the next one. And in your first reading, if you get 25, 30, 50% of it, it's pretty good. And this is so dense. People have said this should be 4 or 5 books. So if you get that much, you're doing very well. You'll understand a lot. And a few points can change your whole thinking, your whole outlook. Then go back second time. And now you'll find that most of it makes more sense because certain things are explained later which help clarify what was earlier. I've tried juxtaposing sequence many times and I gave up because all these ideas are so intertwined. You have to read the whole thing. So when you read the second time, it'll make a lot more sense. Join my e-group. If you give your email, I'll put you in my discussion group which has 3,000 members. And these are people who read the book and discussing it and raising questions. So what we are doing in Q&A here happens every day. 5 or 10 posts are given. Somebody gives an example. Somebody talks this. Somebody talks that. They're talking about this issue. In fact, they're discussing my various books. And you will help me also. You will connect with other people also. And then if you have issues still, you write to me. And I'll be more than happy to lead you, guide you further.
Hi, this is Lakshmi, and I have a question about one of the facts that you made, that Americans, if they want to become like Hindus or think like Hindus at least, they need to have a sense of belonging. I've seen some of my friends really interested to know about India and Indian culture, but in general, when I came here, I realized that Americans are very independent and very individualistic in their way of life and way of thought, apart from being religious. And I don't see Americans here as religious Christians as Christians in India are religious. Like, that's the kind of difference that I'm observing. And I would like you to... and one more question that I have is vegetarianism there in any other Christian culture that is perfect contrast to Hinduism? Like you said, Indian culture and Jewish can't go together. That is both complementary. So is vegetarianism, that is something that can be used as universal? Okay. Thank you.
It's a good question. It's a common belief I argue against in this book. It's a common belief that Westerners are more individualistic and Indians are more stuck in their caste and their jati, and they're stuck in a hierarchy and they're not able to think for themselves. These are stereotypes the European Indologists built about us. I argue many counterexamples. Indian music is improvisation. That's a lot of freedom, not fixed music scores that your whole orchestra has to keep repeating, performing. Indian chef is not, you take so many ounces of this to so many degrees for so many minutes. Indian chef produces wonderful things from intuition, improvises. The chapter 4 on order and chaos shows how Indians are very comfortable with uncertainty, and uncertainty, creativity, unpredictability, flux are at the heart of individuality, Indian individuality. Whereas Westerners are taught to be, Western religion teaches them to be more relying on dogma, order, fixation, and any dogma-oriented, order-oriented is less individualistic. So Westerners, conformity with religion, conformity with one book, conformity with one particular deity, conformity with one church, is not individualistic as far as religion goes. They may be more individualistic. They'll have their high lifestyle and have money, and they can have hairstyles and clothes and travel around and say, I'm very individualistic. But those who are Christian have very little improvisation, whereas I as a Hindu have much more flexibility in my Ishta Devata. I can do this ritual or do that ritual or whatever. I am not led by a congregation, one guy teaching, everybody has to comply and obey. And this comes from a whole history of obedience. God in Christianity, in Judaism, Christianity and Islam, the primary idea is obedience. Primary idea. And the human disobedience by Adam and Eve, and disobedience by others, and disobedience by others is called sin. So the whole story is God's edicts for obedience and man's disobedience creating sin, and then the resulting outcome of that. And the three Abrahamic religions have different versions of that single idea. God's obedience, man's disobedience, and all the problems that come out of that. So this fixation with the obedience as the ideal rather than going inward. See, if my faith says that I cannot go inward and have my observe, watch my own consciousness and get my own insight, that would be very individualistic. But if my faith says that I have to copy the history of that guy and what he said and basically obey that, I'm being less individualistic, more following a certain institutional method. So while Westerners are more individualistic in business, in commerce, in freedom, in travel, these kind of things, when it comes to religion, Westerners have very little freedom to deviate from their particular denomination's demands. Indians are not denominational. You go and look at a church has a roster of members. It's a very old thing. Now in America we started having members, church has list of members and all that. But you know, you go to Encyclopedia Britannica or you go to some website and you look at how many people are members of various denominations. They'll tell you Southern Baptists, so many million, Baptists, so many million, Presbyterian, Episcopalians, Lutherans, blah, blah, blah. Every denomination has a very formal list of who are members. And you ask a person, are you an Episcopalian? He'll say, yeah, I'm Episcopalian. The other guy will say, I'm Southern Baptist. The other guy will say, I'm Mormon. Very clear. I don't see, if you ask a Hindu, he will not say, I am this. Very few will, very orthodox people will say that. Most will say, on Monday I do Shiv Vrat, and on Navratri I do that, and on this one I go and celebrate this and that. I kind of ad hoc mix match more easily for Hindus. So more individualism in that respect. And you see in a family, you see my family, my grandmother did something, my grandfather doing some havan, and his one son going to this temple, another one doing that. Lot of freedom. And so that's because the argumentative nature and the individual nature, the idea of swadharma. I explain in this. The idea of swadharma is the ultimate individualism, which says, like we have on the web, we have my websites, my favorites, my documents. So we have my dharma. Okay. So just like on your desktop is individualized and is not one uniform for everybody. You can have your desktop, you can have my favorites, my whatever. In the case of spirituality and faith, I can have my tradition, my dharma, is called Swadharma. Now you can't have my Christianity. You can't. There is the Christianity. For a Baptist, it is particular interpretation. He will not accept Lutheran in the same church. He will not. Lutheran has got his idea. The church defines what is the Lutheran view. Every Lutheran follows that. The Lutheran website will tell you, to be a Lutheran, you must comply with the following rules. 1, 2, 3, you sign up for that. If you don't, you can't join in. So, this is belief-based. Belief is standardized, canonized, institutionally controlled. Institutions, a given church passes resolution on do we allow gays or not. And that becomes the institutional position. All the members follow that. There is dissent, argumentation, and then they keep putting it back for vote, and one day it gets turned over, and that becomes the new policy. Should women become priests or not? Each denomination got a policy. That's the policy. We don't have policies like that. We have guidelines, but even Manusmriti says that the highest dharma is your swadharma, your dharma. Then, so there's many kinds of dharma. There's jati dharma, which is sort of uniformed by the elders of the jati. There's varna dharma, there's ashram dharma, there is your dharma for your desh, and then the ultimate dharma is swadharma, my dharma, based on my guna, my conditions, my circumstances, my state of evolution. This is why we are able to accept that some guy needs to be into obedience for very tamasic people, too much freedom is not good. Because it's like children who need some discipline. If you tell them you can improvise the way you drive, you can do whatever, they'll get in trouble. You can't you can't, when you're learning music, a junior guy is taught to copy and repeat the same same beat. Only a very advanced maestro goes beyond normative thinking and uniformity and standardization. He's allowed to go break the mold. That is the highest in our tradition. Dancer, same way, he can improvise. But when your starting point, it is uniformity. So a Hindu view would be that the Abrahamic religions are for beginners because there's a lot of obedience, very little improvisation, very little deviation from a standardized normative approach. So I would argue that there is far more individualism in as far as the religiosity is concerned, a far more individualism in our tradition. I also explain in this book, dharma cannot be equated as religion for this very reason. Because religion is conformity. And that conformity is, God gives this one final prophet or one son some edicts, and that has to be followed, and there's no such thing as I had an enlightenment experience, I'm following mine. Or I'm following Raman Maharshi because he was enlightened and nothing to do with what any text says. I'm following my guru. The idea that there is a living master who is enlightened is very scary to the Abrahamic religions. Because in the Abrahamic religions, you might not know this, but to be a saint, one has to be dead. You can't have living saints. In the Christian church, they have had tens of thousands of saints. They have a list of them. And which date each one was canonized, by which pope, and what was his accomplishment, what miracles he performed that made him worth being a saint. Not one saint in the history of Christianity was made a saint while they were alive. They all had to be saint only after they're dead. Why? Because a living saint would be a threat to the institutional authority. The living saint could say, I am enlightened, I have the ultimate knowing, I have reached unity consciousness, and I'm telling you this, whatever these church people are saying, they're a bunch of babus and bureaucrats, they don't know. People will go to the living saint. They will not go to the institution. So, to create institutional authority, you have to get rid of the living saint tradition. Christianity did that. Many mystics were actually persecuted and killed. And those who were canonized as saints were only after they're dead, because the dead guy is safe, he can't talk back. He can't teach anything, he can't be a threat. You see what I'm saying? And you have to be dead for 5 years. That makes sure that you're really dead, In rare examples like Mother Teresa, they can waive the 5 year and make it 3 years. But you got to make sure the guy is gone, dead. A dead saint, canonized as saint, becomes property of the church. He's like a brand, he's like a mascot. I can do fundraising in his name. I can have schools and colleges. Now I can make up whatever I want about him. He's not going to argue back. He's kind of my property. So the living saint tradition versus the dead saint tradition. Yeah? The living enlightenment in us as Swachchitanand, living enlightenment in us, versus one person in history only had that experience, nobody else can. No Christian is allowed to say that he is Jesus and he can have the same experience as Jesus had. He cannot. No Muslim will agree that he has the potential, maybe difficult, but among all the Muslims, some people will achieve the potential of having the exact same experience as Muhammad. They cannot. It only happened once, it will never happen, you don't even have the potential. But I'm allowed to say that I have the same potential in me as any Rishi ever had. I can have the, because I'm Satchitanand, I am the exact same thing that he is. I'm not any different. Whether I've realized it or not is up to me. You see? So this is a huge difference between the individualism and freedom. They keep saying they're more free, but I'm pointing out reasons why we are more free. These are all ideas of freedom. We don't have the bondage to history. They are bondage to history, bondage to dead prophet, bondage to one event, one book, one canon, one church which is going to enforce it. We don't have that. So this is a very big difference. Now the second question was what? Vegetarianism. Okay. So lot of people in Western religions are turning vegetarian for health reasons. Health reasons. It's all about what's good for me according to medical science. It's not rights of that animal. Then there is animal rights. There are animal rights people. A lot of animal rights are Hindu influenced in the West. This is the idea of earth is sacred, kind of Hindu experience, Hindu idea. And I explain very clearly in this book, the cosmos is not divine presence. That is called pantheism, and that is a pagan idea which is banned in Christianity. In Islam, if you say the earth is sacred, even ask an informed Muslim, is the Kaaba sacred? They'll say, no, it's a holy place, but it's not sacred. Sacred means divine presence, like in our murtis, there's divine presence. You do pran pratishta, there's divine presence. So for us, there's divinity present in so many places. And that is considered idol worship, and it is banned in those traditions. Because divinity is only external to the cosmos, not present in the cosmos. God created the cosmos like somebody makes a clock or a machine or a computer and turns it on and it works. But God's immanence and presence is not the same way as we see it. So when we see the idea of killing an animal and eating as a karma, it is not the same logic for them to be vegetarian. Their logic is different. They may also decide not to eat. They may be a better vegetarian, more rigorous than we are. Many of them are more rigorous than we are. But philosophically and metaphysically, they're not doing it for the same reason. And when they say we will protect the environment, in fact, Westerners have become cleaner in the environment now in the last 30, 40 years than Indians. And they're very good at it. But it is not that the environment is sacred, has its own rights. It's because we humans, if we have a dirty environment, it will be bad for our health. The fish industry will die, it will be bad for our economy. The air will get polluted and we'll have to do more cleanup. So environment is our property. God made the world as man's property to exploit. Animals included. Bible is very clear. God made animals and world for man's pleasure. In the early time, even women were made for that. But later they sort of reformed it. Yeah. But the idea that all of this is sacred is very Hindu idea. We ask Mother Earth's forgiveness when the child is going to begin to start walking, because I'm going to walk on the Mother Earth. When we harvest, we chant mantras, we do it in a certain way at a certain time because we want to do it very ethically, not over harvest, because we may be hurting the plant. We are required to do that. And you see, there is no such thing as this is all product for man's consumption, and we basically can use it and exploit it because God made it for us. But this is true in the case of the Abrahamic religions. Meat eating is sanctified as something God has given for you. So that is, and you should also understand, people are translating yajna as sacrifice. Don't translate it as yajna as sacrifice. Sacrifice is human sacrifice that then got turned into other ideas of sacrifice. Human sacrifice existed in some of these Middle Eastern societies. And then God decides that he will be the final human sacrifice as Jesus. Jesus is considered in Christianity as human sacrifice to therefore end future need for human sacrifice. This is true. And the whole, I have a friend in Princeton who's a big Westerner. She's a Catholic and she's a scholar of Catholicism and become very famous and popular now for writing a very provocative interpretation. And she gives a lot of interpretation of the importance of human sacrifice and then replacing it with symbolic alternatives. Now it is symbolically like when you are eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood, these kind of rituals. So you are symbolically enacting that sacrifice to participate in that sacrifice because you don't want to really do it, so you participate in it symbolically. How the whole system based on, number one, obedience, edicts from God, number two, man's disobedience turning into sin, and then the remedy is sacrifice. So when we are doing yagna, it has nothing to do with that. Yagna is a non-translatable. So for us, going back to your question, vegetarianism is a different rationale. Sometimes you have different rationales leading to the same end result in terms of what you do, but your thought process is quite different in that case. No Westerner would say that, this, like I had a dog who died 2 years ago, and I had a lot of experiences about this being a child from a previous life in our family. And so many times, everybody in the family felt that there's something very amazing about this dog's presence. Now, Christians, Jewish, Islamic people can't relate to that, can't understand what this guy is saying. They would not think of an animal that we've ever had an animal life in our past. They would not think that way. They would not. But when Buddha got enlightenment, and a lot of Hindu enlightened beings felt the same way, Buddha says, I recall, I have been a butterfly, I've been an insect, I've been an elephant, I've been this, I've been a snake, I've been a rat, I've been this. I recall all that. And I've been in this race, and I've been in that race, I've been born in this tribe, that place. He had a sudden, instant flash of past, thousands of lives, all happening now. He experienced that. So our tradition is that you are bringing in your prarabdha, in your deep, deep unconscious, you're bringing your collective experience of so many lives that are shaping who you are. So our relationship with animals and plants and sacred nature is very, very different than these other traditions, even though they may be vegetarian.
I'm sure we can spend the whole night here. I'm just going to have 3 more people who are waiting ask their questions, and we'll wrap it up. And maybe you can talk to him personally.
While listening to a very informative lecture, I would like to ask some devil's advocates questions. Number 1, non-Hindu complained about assimilation of Hindu octopus, by Hindu octopus, number 1. Number 2, they say, while you are talking, the philosophy is good, but your social system is so indiscriminate and inhuman. Number 3, if it is of sacrifice, what is the sacrifice of Bali in the Yajna? And they claim that Hindu, before the Shankaracharya, Hindu used to eat meat. It's compulsory after the Shraddha. Can be Hindu reject karma and punarjanma theory and image worship and being Hindu?
Okay, so I'll have to first remember which one is which question. What was the first one? Octopus. So Hindus also assimilate. There is in chapter 4, I've described Hindu acculturation contrasted with Western digestion. I explain that. I explain the Hindu acculturation contrasted with Western digestion. The difference is illustrated when a lot of Hindus and Buddhist thought got exported to China, Japan, Southeast Asia. There was no invading army imposing it. Those guys brought it in. They sent their students, like we sent students to Harvard to bring back knowledge. It was not imposed on them. There was never an attempt, when India was very strong and powerful compared to these other Asian countries, there was never an attempt to install a governor and collect taxes from them, like the Westerners did. So the circumstances under which the knowledge was exported, the culture was exported, was not power-oriented. Historically, the West did that for power-oriented. Expansion of Christianity, Islam, all with the sword. The Hindu did not try to change the history of the Chinese, even when the whole Chinese became Buddhists and they looked at India as the mother civilization, or Japan or Mongolia or any of them. The Hindu did not impose their language, replace Mandarin, give them a new sense of history, install viceroys. So it is very different than the spread of Western universalism and the spread of Islamic universalism, where it was control oriented, change the language, change the history, make them point to Makkah, that kind of thing. We never said point to Banaras and all those things, never did that. So the Hindu octopus which assimilates has had a different characteristic. It is more like, I'll assimilate you, but once you've been assimilated, you will retain your identity as part of me. It's kind of like that. So, in fact, I would say there is an opposite criticism. Opposite criticism is we assimilate the guy and we let him be his own jati. Rather than saying now you no longer have to have the jati. It works both ways. If you assimilate the Western way and you eliminate his distinctiveness, in a sense you've destroyed that distinctiveness, but in a sense you've also destroyed the basis for prejudice against him. You see. So whereas in our case we've said you can join, you can not join, you can retain your identity, you can call a new identity, but we're not imposing a one uniform thing on you. So this is my response to the first issue. Second issue is a big difference between the ideal and the lived reality of society. This is very true. This is true of all cultures. You might not, we know about the history of Christian slavery and all the way. We know the history of what happened to the Native Americans. The Pope sanctified killing them, genociding them because they were not considered proper human beings, even the Native Americans. So we know that this difference between ideal and lived reality is there in every culture, and the importance of prosperity and material mobility in this, because those who are prosperous can afford more mobility and better lifestyle for everybody. And when you have a small pie being fought for by a lot of people, then you have more exploitation opportunity. And you might think that even in Islam has no racism and prejudice and caste system, but Islam does. Islam has the Ashraf. You should search A-S-H-R-A-F, Ashraf, and Ajlaf. The Ashraf are said to be those Muslims in the Indian subcontinent who came from Arab, Persian or Turkish origins. And the Ajlaf are those Indians who got converted to Islam. That's racist, caste oriented. And the Ashraf, which is the upper caste, are further divided into 4 categories. The highest Ashraf are Saids, who are only those people can be Saids who are direct descendants of the Prophet. Direct descendants of the Prophet. I once had a debate with a Muslim guy, and he raised caste, and his name happened to be Said. So I said, you claim to be direct descendant of the Prophet. And he knew what I'm after. He said, I said, that's Ashraf. He quickly said, we don't want to talk about all these things, change the subject. Because usually they don't expect a Hindu to know these things. So the highest caste of Ashraf are Saids. Second highest are Sheikh. Sheikh is any Arab, not necessarily descendant from, Prophet, but Arab. Then is Turk, the Turkish. And then is Pashtun, the Iranians. These are the 4 top castes of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent. If you want to read more about it, there's a guy called Ahmad, I've forgotten his first name, who wrote the Islamic caste system. He was a JNU professor, and the Muslims didn't like, because he was exposing all this. And he was even giving statistics that 70, 80, 90% of all the reservations for top jobs, governor and all these prestigious jobs for Muslims, have been given to the Ashraf Muslims. And the lower caste Muslims are not being given their fair share, even though they are 80, 90% of the population. They have 10, 20% of the reservations. And all these are Shabana Azmi and her husband, all these guys, big fighting human rights, they're all Ashraf. Yeah, okay. So this is the Ashrafization of Islam in India. That is a topic which is taboo. You will not get a job if you write a PhD on this, or you go to some conference and submit a paper, they'll throw you out. They don't want to hear these things. But this is true. So I'm not defending, we can't defend ourselves by saying everybody has got the same problem. If I have a disease, it doesn't mean that you have it too, it helps me, We have to solve our problem. But we have to realize that human culture, human civilization is far from perfect in its ancient sense. We have to progress, advance, clean up our act. Others have to do their own cleaning up of their act. We are not a perfect civilization in terms of how we have implemented it. And nobody, no Hindu rishi has claimed that we have ever had certainly in the Kali Yuga, that we've had a society where everybody is enlightened and everybody is sattvic. I mean, the whole idea is that there's tamasic people, there's rajasic people, and they all have to be helped and moved up. So human culture and human society also reflects the different grades and different qualities of individual guna that exist. And we have our share of problems because of that, as do others. So that is this one. What was the next one? Yeah. Okay. We've had, the thing about Hinduism is, you will find something or other in a text or in a practice of every kind there is. Every practice that anybody has done in the world, you will find something or other in Hinduism also. And this is because Hinduism, like an encyclopedia, keeps adding new knowledge without expunging, eradicating, eliminating old knowledge. There's a difference between knowledge accumulating into encyclopedia. The first Encyclopedia Britannica in the 1700s, I am told, was 3 volumes, and then it kept knowledge. So you add more knowledge. So this is the Hindu approach. Open architecture, like you keep adding apps on Apple, you keep adding more and more apps. There's no requirement that you have to get the 10 perfect apps and eliminate all of them, the rest of them. Whereas the Western system is purgative, it is purging also. So in our system, we have no central authority that is required to purge. We believe that human consciousness is at all levels, from very useless, bad type to all very advanced human consciousness, because the divine has manifested and is evolving. So you will find people at all these levels. And you will find mention of all these practices, and you will probably find some weird guy somewhere doing it also. You'll go to Nepal and they're doing some sacrifice, some goat sacrifice, whatever they're doing. So Hinduism has many, many beliefs, many, many ideas, sanctified or not sanctified. Some are practiced but not interpreted. That is very true. The situation is very different in a centrally controlled, canonized, standardized, one book, one history approach. You see, if I'm having problems in my family because I've made rules and regulations and bylaws which say this is how we will do things, I have made it official policy that that's how things are going to be, then that kind of problem as a result of that is of a certain kind. In your family, you haven't made any such thing. You've given people a lot of freedom, and a lot of people are doing some things, different things, and some of them are doing bad things also. You too have the problem, but I cannot say it's the same kind as mine. This is a very different problem. So that is my view on that. And the final question? Can a person be a Hindu while rejecting the dharma? Okay, this is a very interesting question. This is a very interesting question. The Hinduism is basically a self-realization rather than God-realization. Therefore, when I start a discussion with people, they say, prove God. I say, I'm not even here to prove God. My starting point is not, is there a God, and why, which God, and who created, could he exist, and what not. That is the way the Abrahamic tradition start the discussion on religion. They started on God. Chapter 1 is always on God. And I start with, who am I? And so I ask the person in the audience, do you have doubt that you exist? And nobody wants to doubt that he exists. So at least we got one thing going, that some kind of I exists. The question is, who is this I? The only question is, who is this I? But there is no doubt that there is some kind of I. So at least I have a common ground with the audience when I start with self-realization, inquiry, rather than God-realization, inquiry. It's very different. So when we talk about self-realization, then the discoveries made by rishis who attempted different techniques of meditation. Some did neti, and they argued and reasoned, this, not that. Some did, vipassana, some did tantra, some did whatever. There are various systems of meditation were experimented. The way scientists in a laboratory experiment different things, and then what they discover they share with other scientists, and he tries it also, and if he validates it, he also likes it, and then it keeps getting transmitted to the next generation. And whatever doesn't work, people go reject it or abandon it and try something else. So it's this way, experiential, experimental self-discovery is the quintessential Hinduism. What you discover is valid as your truth. If you discover a way of higher consciousness, whether it is taught by somebody to you or you just discover it yourself, and that gives you anand, and you get that feeling of Satchitanand, then whether you believed in X or not believed in X makes no difference. So you do not have to believe in anything. If you can practice a path of self-enlightenment for which there is Raj Yoga, which actually says that all texts, all beliefs, all ideas, all philosophies are provisional and only good up to a point. You can believe them, you can use them like a raft to cross the river, then you abandon it and go beyond, and you don't carry that raft on your head after you cross the river. So you have to abandon all these ideas, all the concepts, these ideas we were talking about are provisional, they get you past the stage. If you don't need that, you don't have to have it. So our faith even gives you that much individual freedom that there is no belief that you must hang on to. Your idea in this world is to achieve a state of higher being, higher consciousness, however it works for you. Now these ideas work for a lot of people. It guides them in the right way. It avoids them certain problems. It gives them a certain sense of coherence about the world. It gives them a sense of explanation and logic to the world, and it works for them. But many rishis did not have any such starting assumption or axiom, and they did just fine. So Hinduism does not box you into even these articles.
What makes one to be a philanthropist or have such proclivation? Is it religion, faith, or? I'm Prabhu Garla. My question is, what makes one to be philanthropic inclination? Is it faith, religion, dharma, or something else?
Well, you have to ask each philanthropist. So you have to ask Bill Gates why he's a philanthropist, or you ask whoever you want to ask. I can only talk about myself. I don't see myself as a philanthropist. I see myself as doing my swadharma, which is to serve my tradition, which is a tree that gave fruit, and I want to return. So I am not helping you or helping anybody, but my own self. And I don't want to be seen as somebody who's sort of a nice guy trying to help others. Actually, I'm helping myself. By doing this, by doing whatever I do, I get satisfaction. I hope to become a better person. I hope to become a better informed person. I hope to do some good to the bigger cause of my dharma, which I feel is a great asset that humanity has, great potential for all human beings, not just people of our particular tradition. So I am doing good for if I'm trying to do good to preserve and propagate and interpret and explain my dharma, that is my calling, and I do it for myself. And if it benefits others, that's fantastic, but it certainly benefits me, because I become hopefully a better person, better knowledgeable person, greater clarity. And so in a sense, whether this produces any outcome for others, whether it changes anybody else or not, I still feel that I've succeeded if I got clarity. And people ask me these very stereotype questions. The publisher want to know who's your target reader. And then they lock you into a table of contents. Then you have to say, okay, so many pages for this chapter, so many that, and then you're producing that. I can't do that. For me, I get up early morning and I have an inspired writing output. I have an inspired, I don't know from where it comes, but it's inspired. I can produce from 10 pages to 30 pages in one day, uninterrupted, just bang, bang, bang out. It comes from somewhere. Now, this output inspired, intuitive kind of output is to be honest, and I only answer this to certain audiences because they'll understand it. I don't answer this to a publisher because they won't understand it. But the honest answer is that the audience I'm writing for is myself. It's a very strange thing. I'm really searching the answer for my own benefit. You know, it's like some musicians say that I really compose music to feel good for myself, and then I can play for others also if they want to hear. But I'm singing a song which means a lot to me. It's my own song, and then I play. So in the same sense, mine is a discovery for truth that will help me as a person. I'm very keen to understand things and have a lot more things to discover. So I'm actually on a journey of self-discovery and my own Swadharma, and others may see it as philanthropy. Others may see that, you know, he's trying to help others and maybe good at it or maybe no good at it. It really, at the end of the day, doesn't matter because I get a lot of satisfaction. I'd rather be doing this than anything else. It's the greatest gift I got when I met my guru, and that changed my life. And then I realized the futility of all the running around and all the useless things I was doing previously, which was also part of the journey, which I'm happy I did those things and I'm out of it. I've transcended that. And so this is my answer, and you have to ask every person why they are doing what they're doing. Yeah.
Just for that answer, namaste. A couple of questions that I have, and these are just my ignorance, and so I'm just kind of trying to discover in my own way. Can you name some places where this dharmic way of living is still in practice? Is there a place where we can go see, we can experience with these people the dharmic way that they are living, whether it is here in this country or back in India or anywhere on the planet? That was one question. The second is, you kind of touched this, but I'd like you to go a little bit in depth. What we are talking here is a clash of two different categories, the dharmic way and the other one. Now, what has the role of science been in this clash? Thank you.
Okay, two excellent questions. Thanks for that. So, I don't know if there's a showcase, you know, like a Disney World where you get a tour and say, these are dharmic people, next place they are. I mean, I don't know if there is a place like that, but I'm just joking, but I know the intent of your question. You want to go to a community where you can immerse yourself and maybe live that life. You see, I have done a lot of that. I have been initiated by all kind of gurus, and I have practiced all kind of meditations and all kind of sadhanas. In many ashrams, I've been just doing a lot of that. As part of my churning, I travel around, and so I like to, when I'm understanding something, I like to try it. Then I have an insider's view, and not just a book knowledge view. So I feel that what will click is different for different temperaments. And this is very beautiful in our tradition. You may find somebody clicks with a bhakti temperament because that is their predisposition, and somebody else wants to go into high states of meditation, and somebody through karma and service to others sees the divine in the others that he's serving, and that's their way. And so this way you will find different paths for, some are very philosophical into Gyan. So you will find different communities offering different combinations of these different paths, different margas. So there may not be one that everybody will like, because what one may like, another may not like at all. What worked for me is a lot of experimentation. And my temperament is questioning. I challenge. If they don't like to answer my question, I just cannot be doing just blind stuff, and So I'm trained as a scientist. I'm trained to question, quiz, and be inquisitive. And so that is what worked for me, is to find people who could answer, give me a lot of satisfaction, and with the answers, I tried those answers in my life, and they worked for me, so I was very happy with that. That's my kind of answer. And each person has to go looking for themselves, I would say. The second question is also very interesting. What is the role of science? Because, science is a sort of neutral, culturally neutral. If you discover something through a telescope and somebody in Japan looks at the same part of the sky and somebody from China and somebody from South Africa, they will say they found the same thing. And if you have a certain laboratory experiment and others can replicate the experiment, they'll get the same result. So you do have a certain external truth, because it is external, objectified truth and not internal, subjective truth. You can have a universal claim which is not civilization dependent. Science is a very wonderful thing. Now, science, because its scope is limited to what is empirically measurable, science does not have a position, cannot honestly take a position on things which are not empirically measurable. So it cannot validate or falsify whether, Muhammad got that dream, because you cannot put it in a laboratory today and mention and measure it. It cannot validate or falsify whether, those who died went to heaven, because we don't have a telescope that looks at heaven. We don't. So a realm which is beyond observability of science cannot be within the scope of science. That doesn't mean it is false. It doesn't mean it is unscientific or anti-scientific. It just means it is outside the scope and domain of science. Now, something very interesting in our tradition, which the Abrahamic traditions don't have, and the book explains, there is this Adhyatma Vidya, inner experience, which is empirical but personal. It is called first person empiricism, means my experience of a certain technique which gave me a certain experience. Yeah? And I can teach it to you, and you have to find for yourself whether you got that experience or not. This is called first person empiricism. Nobody can observe it through the telescope or microscope and like you are observing something external to yourself. The telescope and microscope and laboratory is within. And the instrument of knowing is a very clean mind which is still, which is not disturbed mind, which is not jumping around. And that is what meditation tries to do, is give you a stillness, clarity of a sattvic mind, clarity mind. So when you are in a stillness of clarity mind and very hyper alert consciousness, you experience things which are not normally experienced, because the cluttered mind and agitated mind is covering it up. The veil is there. So when you are into that stillness, that veil is not there, and you realize that you already have that inside you. It's not something external you're watching. So this methodology, which is the height of our tradition, is, I call it first person empiricism. It is empiricism because I can replicate it, I can teach somebody else, and he can validate it or falsify it. And it is observable in the present moment, and it is not something that you have to experience when you die in some other place. Now this first person empiricism is scientific. It's a new kind of science. It's first person empirical science. Because it is verifiable, it is reproducible. Science has to be verifiable by somebody and reproducible. Whereas the Abrahamic religion's historical claim, history can't be reproducible. But this is not historical claim, this happens to everybody. So if you do a certain thing, you get a certain siddhi, you get a certain clarity. It may take you a very long time. It may require a huge sacrifice. It may take many births because your person may be messed up to start with. But enough people have validated it to give this lineage, to give lineages long-term sustainability. Because ultimately, if the methodology doesn't work, people abandon it. Because the demands being made are lifelong, huge amount of demands to go into this and give up so many things. People aren't going to do that if it didn't work. So the validation of science, closest we can get, is in our tradition, which is first person empiricism, replicated by others who are taught, and if it didn't work, they would wander off. If it does work, they'll propagate it to the next person. So even though a very small percent of the Hindu population have been at that stage where they're practicing it successfully and able to get this, even that small percentage is enough to create credibility for the other population that they want to at least practice it and try it and believe in it. Whereas the option is closed, the option of verifiability is closed in a tradition where certain things happen in history that are not reproducible. Nobody else can have them because of the nature of man. because of the nature of man not being Satchitanand and not being the same as that other person. Therefore, that experience is impossible and beyond reach. So we have that edge in scientific terms, but it is not the same kind of scientific validation as third-person empirical science, which is external.
Thank you very much, Rajiv ji. You've given such crystal clear explanations for all the doubts and questions and musings of all of us. Thank you very much. At this time, I would invite Dr. Garla to please come up on the stage to honor the speaker.
Rajiv ji, we are all thrilled and we are blessed by your presence, and we thank you for enlightening us.
Thank you.
I would like to offer a little present for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope we can see you again soon.
Yes, I will be in honor. I would love to come. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Can I say a few words?
Yes,
Thank you.
one more.
Yeah.
After this is over, Raji will be at the desk. Those who want to buy the book, please buy it and he will sign it for you personally.
I want to thank Balaji Temple and the leaders of the temple and the sponsors for arranging this event. It means a lot to, I find one of the biggest rewards is audiences that are very serious, very interested, very good questions. They're not just sitting there and just taking everything at its word, but they want to question. And I would love to come back and do a workshop if you want. I would love to come back for a half day, 1 day, and give you more details. Because my interest is in meeting people on the same journey. And we are all in this journey together. And therefore, when I meet other people, it's such a joy. And I want to thank you for that. Now, on a very practical note, I need your email address. I want to keep in touch with you. And I'll put you in my discussion group. I'll also put you on my large email list where I send out whenever there's a new video or a new book or something new I've done, I send out an announcement to that. And so whether you buy the book or not, I would certainly urge you to leave your email address. Unfortunately, 25% of the emails I get bounce because they didn't write clearly. So that dot or underline or space or whatever, you should write in block letters your email. Name is less important because I only keep a list of email IDs and I send you things. And those who are interested, some people have expressed interest to help me. And I certainly welcome anybody who's got any ideas, any proposals on how these ideas can be propagated more widely. Please do contact me. I'm a one-man show. I have limited resources. I do whatever I can by myself. And all the help that is available is more than welcome. Thank you so much.
Before you go, I just wanted to thank Dr. Ramashankar and her friends for sponsoring this event and Prasad Yalamanchi for hosting the speaker. Thank you all for coming and making this such an enriching experience. Thank you very much.
I want to compliment you for your wonderful talk on being different, and you have given some examples of Om, Atman,
Shakti,
Shakti.
Yoga.
I would like to add one more terms, which is falsely and poorly translated into English. Sanskrit word is mithya.
Yeah.
It is translated as illusion. There is no illusion about Jagat.
Yes.
Jagat is dependent upon Brahman.
Yes.
Therefore it is called Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya.
Yeah.
World depends upon Brahman. Brahman has got independent existence. I'm just throwing one more. There are many, many things I can say, but this is what happens when you try to translate Sanskrit word into a Western audience.
Yes.
So you falsify it, you know you are falsifying it, but there is no other way to explain it.
Okay.
Simply say it's illusion.
Yeah. So, first of all, First of all, thank you. Mithya and its meaning is explained in one full appendix in this book. Appendix A is on the different Vedanta ideas of Mithya, none of them saying it's illusion. Different, not just Advaita, but different. It's more dependent existence. It's not unreal, but not independent. Does not have what is called self-existence. And under that definition, even the Buddhists would agree. They don't believe in theism and God and all the Brahman, but they believe that nothing has separate self-existence. So they wouldn't say that this object is dependent upon Brahman, that the way Hindus would say. They would say it is not independently existing. But what it depends on is not Brahman, but something called coexistence, mutual coexistence of everything. Yeah. So this is exactly the kind of discussion in this book. Now, the remedy, a lot of gurus with the defensiveness they've given, is that the only way I can explain is by saying it's illusion. I don't buy that, because then every generation, from Vivekananda, who translated so much in English, he understood the meanings. But every generation that goes on loses the true meaning, and how it is communicated to Western universalism becomes like the assumed meaning. Because Western universalism is so powerful. The person who knows, like Vivekananda, has his private reality in which he knows Mithya, and then he's speaking publicly to the Western audience, he's calling it illusion, and therefore he's clear. But this communication to the West circulates, becomes translated, becomes part of the textbook. It is how Indians in future generation also learn. So now the reason Indians are confused and they keep saying illusion is because we ourselves started it in order to become more easily accessible to the West, and then that westernized version became re-exported back to Indians also. So I would offer a different idea. I would say, do not tell the pancake guy that this is a pancake only to make it easy. Do not make it easy. He has to work hard to learn to make a dosa. It's like, don't tell the guy that we are doing exercise, but we're just doing all this thing and all that. Telling you doing yoga and you're not doing exercise. And you got to keep learning. It may take you 100 years to figure out what is distinct about yoga and why it is not exercise, but that is the effort, that is the purusharth, that is the sadhana that you have to do. So philosophically, Germans have got many terms from the German language. They're part of English, and they've introduced them because the English language didn't have such a term. So if we introduce the term mithya, if we introduce this term, we are not being tough guys to mean and unreasonable. We are saying that the English language is being enriched by a philosophical principle. I have explained in the appendix, writing pages and pages to explain what it means. But it is not a one-word translation. You see, it's not a one-word translation. You can explain it in English, but it takes a lot of effort, and the person better learn, otherwise he doesn't get it. When you keep control of your categories, the discourse is on our terms. The first thing when somebody asks me, what do you think of the caste system? I tell him caste is a European word. It's a Portuguese word called casta, and it got introduced. There is no Sanskrit word. So I think caste is a European concept brought into India and accepted by India. So they say, well, but we have a caste system. I say, no, we have a jati system. I've taken control of the discourse because I control my term. We have jati and we have varna. So I'll explain to you what is jati, what is varna. And we can argue and discuss how it is similar to what has become caste, how it is different from what has become caste. So the digestion of jati and varna into Western universalism category of caste has come about as a very big problem for India, breaking up India, fragmenting India, caste politics, vote bank politics. It's because we have taken that category and forgotten our own category. It's a category problem. And to reverse this problem, we have to reconnect with our own category and explain. Jati was very different in the sense that jatis were not fixed in a hierarchy. Jatis were fluid. Some jatis would move up and down. And you had people of different varna in the same jati. So every jati from the lowest to the highest has its own priest class, its own pujaris, its own it's not like the lower so-called lower jatis don't have their own house of worship. They have their own temples. They have their own, people doing purohits. So this idea that this whole jati is got no religious authority and it all depends on some other religious authority is a very recent and a wrong idea, because you go to, I went to Nagapattinam after the tsunami because we built a youth hostel there, and I lived with the fishermen, they call scheduled caste, backward caste, all these kind of things. They have their own Devi Mandir, they have their own goddess temple, they are doing their own puja. So obviously they're not excluded from temple, they have their own. So the concept is different if you understand it in their own term, in our own terms. So that's my response to that.
Fine, I like your idea of keeping our words, but what I'm afraid is that if they get into English and they become English words eventually, we will lose our languages in our other parts because of that process, because then some of the words, like is Brahman, Atman and Maya, whatnot, will get absorbed in English as a terms, and they will become their terms.
Okay. This is a point that can happen unless we are actively using them. For example, some misused terms like Pandit. Now you have Wall Street Pandits and you have, everybody who's Guru. So those are terms we have abandoned. They become like, that's a different way of letting them enter the vocabulary, and we do not use them in the proper way and keep that control ourselves. So Pandit became any old guy who's got some expertise in whatever, he's become a Pandit and Guru and things like that. So your problem is, your question is, your point is a very important one. If you introduce your word into a language and do not keep control over it, and you are not the authority, you're not keeping, people were not complaining that there's a misuse of Guru. Who's this guy Guru, So then what you are doing is you're abandoning that, and the word is becoming trivialized, it's becoming superfluous. That can happen also. But words have been added from various languages where people are very sure, people who use the word as a sign of being a sophisticated person to know a Greek word or a Latin word or a French word. Yeah. And so we have to have our own people who are well spoken in English and writers in English take the responsibility of bringing the word with authenticity into the English language, rather than just introducing a word and making pop culture out of it. A lot of Hindi words and Sanskrit words are becoming part of pop culture. Yeah, so that's the risk and that's the opportunity to preserve the original Sanskrit word.
That we have to keep our culture strong, and they take the parts of it then and they understand it. If we are not strong and they just don't take those words, we are going to be lost.
Yes. So the idea is not to cut-paste a word into some other language. The idea is first you start with children at a young age and you raise that generation to really understand what these are. And they really have to understand what mithya is. So that word mithya is not trivialized into some kind of a joke, but it has to be, you don't want a rock band called mithya and doing things like that, which could happen easily. So you want to explain ourselves very clearly, and then using our own vocabulary, we can control the philosophy.
Something related to the language, the translation of the words. And punya is another word which cannot be translated.
Yes.
Given that you were talking about translating it to English language, would that predominantly mean that translating to a particular religious entity or group of people, only talking about English or a Western language? What about the language of the Chinese and other things? How would it affect in the same manner? If you can elaborate on
Well, I'm saying that we should know the word punya and what it means. And you could be living in the Arab world speaking Arabic, or Chinese world, you're raising your kids in Mandarin, or living in France and raising them in French, or raising them in Russian, but they should always use the word punya. And they should know what it means. And when a person comes and says, what are you doing? Like murti, I have explained, murti is not idol. It's quite sad that we keep translating it as idol.
my last name too.
Yeah. So, Murthy, yeah. What is your first name?
Arun.
And you should not be called Arun Idol. Yeah. Even though there is American Idol and Indian Idol now, but you are Arun Murthy. Yeah. So, and I've explained each one of these why Murthy is not idol. I've got a heading and I've explained many pages on that. So, you should not say we are doing idol worship. You have to explain that this is not an idol. Why? And it means you have to now read about the history of idols in Greek thought and pagan thought, and why and what Christianity thinks of idols, what the 10 Commandments think of idols, how is idol to be kicked and killed and burnt and destroyed according to Islam. You have to read and understand all that. And you have to understand philosophically that this is a very different idea that we have. The idea is different. So part of what the colonizer does is he conquers the colonized person's sense of history, sense of language, sense of categories, and replaces them with his own. He gives you your history and he thinks he's doing you a favor, and all the Indologists were doing that big favor to India, and we were happily accepting it. And today, our billionaires are giving huge millions of dollars of grants to Westerners to translate Sanskrit according to the Western idiom. We are doing that. Narayan Murthy is given a lot of money, $10-20 million to a project in the Northeast to take all our classics and make them into English using these kind of translations. People have given this in Harvard and a lot of places to do that. A Vivekanand chair in University of Chicago, right here, has been endowed by the government of India. And University of Chicago is the place where there is the center of all this scholarship, that Vivekananda was a homosexual and he was abused by Ramakrishna, and Wendy Doniger is the pioneer of all that, right here in the University of Chicago. But because of the politics and the ignorance and all these IFS officers don't know a darn thing about their own culture, we are actually funding these things.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking is related to my next question. We're talking about Christianity digesting the Hinduism. Is that, I missed the early part of your lecture, and sorry, it came a little late, so it's not sure.
Could you put the camera on him?
Yeah. The Christianity part, or is it any other religion, from the religious aspect, not just from the colonizer? So was the other question. The other question was what you talked about.
One question at a time. So second question I need to crystallize so I can answer it. So is Hinduism only being digested into Christianity or also into Islam? That's the question?
That was the reason that was the one that I was asking about, this language.
So the answer to that is that a whole lot of there's a whole lot of Islamization of Hinduism through Sufism that I have not written in this book because I'm focusing on the West. But there's a parallel issue also with Urduization of Indian culture, and the idea of becoming very fashionable that Sufi is the same thing. Now, how many of you would say Sufism is the same thing as Hinduism, as Vedanta? Many of you might say that. Yeah? No. What is the difference? Sufism also says oneness. Sufism also says oneness.
Sufism, Islam. So Islam.
No. We're looking at the concept, not the brand name. We're not looking at the brand name. I'm saying the claim that I'm one with Allah, which the Sufi singer does. How is that different with Aham Brahmasmi as a claim? Not that they're named as Islam and we are named as something. It's not as simple a matter as name is different, because any intelligent child will say name may be different, but they believe underneath the name they're believing the same thing. So my question to you is, how is the Sufi claim of oneness with Allah different? No, but how is it different from when the Sufi says I'm one with Allah? How is it different? Okay,
the Quran doesn't say the standard book where the tenets are pronounced according to Islam. It doesn't say anywhere the Allah is I'm one with.
Very good point. So I had a debate with an imam in Karachi many years ago. He had a website called askimam.com. You could ask him a question, he'd give an answer. He had a discussion group. So I put on a different ID, because I don't want a fatwa, and I signed up. And I asked him the question. He's a Sufi guy. So I asked him the question that when you saying you're one with Allah, one with God, and you're saying it's whatever the Hindus are offering, we also got it in Islam. That was their point. It wanted to digest Vedanta through Sufism into Islam. So I said, how does it reconcile with the Islamic injunction that it is blasphemy to call yourself one with Allah? Anyone who calls himself one with Allah is committing blasphemy or to kill him. How do you reconcile that? First he tried to avoid the question. He keeps saying, brother, we are one, you got blood and I got blood. And he tried to talk like that. Most Hindus would get sucked into that. But I told him, no, I'm not worrying about all those things. I want to have a clear, straight answer. After a lot of back and forth, he said, when the Sufi mystic chants, singing, I am Allah, I'm one with Allah, it's an experiential feeling he's getting. It is not that he actually is one, but he's feeling like he is one. So the difference is that you are a bank teller. You're not the president of the bank. But one day they say, okay, you can sit on the president's chair and feel as if you're president. It's not that you are the president. You can't have an executive order and fire somebody and shut down this and that. You don't have the actual powers of the president. But you can feel, you can pick up the phone and talk like him and all that. You kind of feel like, oh, I'm president. So Allah, by His grace, sometimes for a brief moment, wants to give you that feeling as though you were, but that doesn't mean you actually are. So he says, therefore, the singer is not violating the injunction of Quran because he isn't really Allah. He is simply getting a momentary feeling as though he were due to the grace of Allah. So this is how very cleverly you can say this oneness without violating that you are not one. You see what I'm saying? The difference between feeling something and actually being something. Feeling could be an illusion, feeling could be a dream, feeling could be a hallucination, it could be whatever. So Allah is giving you that feeling as a way to give you that little bit of gift, a gift of an experience. So then I said that now if a Vedantin understands that in Vedanta that oneness is the real nature, it is not just a feeling. It is not that you are completely separate from God, but you will get that feeling just once in a while for a split second, so you can sing about it. It's not that. It is genuine unity. When Vedantins understand the Sufi from this point of view, then the Vedantin cannot be fooled that it is the same thing. Then a Vedantin in a meeting where Sufis are singing and all the Hindus are feeling, oh yeah, we're all one now, we're all the same because they are saying the same thing, we are saying the same thing. All paths lead to the truth. This is their way of saying it, and our Vedantins, gurus are saying the same thing. So why are we different? That's a very dangerous thing because it is different as I just explained. But the difference has to be understood in a very sharp way. Yeah. So this digestion into Christianity, and there's also digestion into Islam. And I'm not telling you which is more dangerous. They're both very dangerous.
The other one is, I wanted to get your opinion on, I think it was V.S. Naipaul who wrote about Death of a Civilization, where when a colonizer or any foreign enemy gets into a country and kills the philosophers, the thinking minds are lost and the people left behind cannot think on their own. So I wanted your opinion on that. And I can ask the other question and go sit down so you can answer both the questions.
But the answer to the first question is obviously true. That is the whole idea of digestion and Western universalism and colonization is entirely because you replace their philosophy, their thinking, their capacity to strategize, their history, with yours. And you call it a gift, I've civilized you. It's called the civilizing mission of the colonizer. Yeah.
Okay, another thing was when you talked about the Sanatana Dharma, I don't know if you spoke about it, but talking about India as a huge continent by itself with different kinds of religious organizations. It could be Ramakrishna Mission, Arya Samaj, Brahmo Samaj, or all the Swamijis based on...
But I got the point. Religious diversity is there. Okay, so what's the point? Question.
So the question is, how will that affect in bringing this unity that we are talking about to avoid being divided?
So this is what the book is all about. The book is about explaining what is the common foundation of dharma across all the dharmas. not only the dharmas of Hinduism that you named, but I am also talking about Jainism, I'm talking about Buddhism. What is the common denominator, what is the DNA of all the dharmas is what the book is about. And without tampering with what is different about them. So there's a family resemblance within the Abrahamic traditions. While they are different from each other, but there's a family resemblance. They all believe God is separate and He sends prophets. Some of them believe prophets 1 through N and don't believe in further prophets. Some of them also believe in prophets N1, N plus 1 onwards. Some believe in final prophet later, like that. So who is your list of prophets is different, but the principle of prophets as your mediator is common. So there is a common family resemblance. It's called family resemblance. The Abrahamic religions are a family. There's a family. Within the family there's difference. So I'm creating the idea of a dharmic family in this book. What is a dharmic family? What are the common principles? While wanting them to retain all the distinctiveness and all the differences that they have. But what are the common principles is what this book is all about.
Historically, all the dominant civilizations have digested and conquered civilizations. Like they say the guy who has gun and between gun and butter, the guy who has gun, he has both gun and butter. So how do you stop it? Dominant civilization either maybe financially strong or militarily strong. Take for example, Roman civilization digested so many civilizations. How do you stop it? How do you survive?
So for our civilization, before you can even start the question of a response, a resistance, the question keeps coming up, what are you defending, what is different about it? This is the reason I wrote this book. I want to establish a clear criteria and a demarcation of how we are different, because then only then you know what are you defending. If in any conversation for all these years, when I would say we are in threat, they'll say who is we, what is that defined as? And I would define it, and then they'll say no, but we're all same. Why? How is it different? So the argument of sameness has been used to prevent any mobilization. The moment you start mobilizing, people will say, but we're all the same because all paths lead to the truth and all the slogans they can give. So my first project is to be able to demarcate Dharma's distinctiveness from the Western religious thought. Only after this is very clear in the minds of people, and then only they'll appreciate as a byproduct of that clarity that it is also worth protecting, because when you understand what's different about it, you will also understand why it's quite remarkable. And only people who've passed through the first bridge, passed through the first filter, in understanding what's different and what is remarkable about the civilization, can ask the next question, what do we have to do to defend it? You see, because a premature mobilization of defense has not worked. That's why all these movements have failed, because they have not established the clarity of what is different. You ask any one of these Hindu champions and leaders and all these guys, they cannot articulate what is distinct. If everything is same, it's all form of Brahman, and it is all mithya, then what is the difference between me and the other guy? I was sitting with Sri, and he was giving this talk that we've got the same truth in all religions. And even recently I gave a talk in University of Ontario in Canada, and a guy from Art of Living was sitting there arguing with me, saying that, but everything has got the same truth and the experience is the same, whether you have it when you do pranayam or Muslim does it, it's the same. He was talking like that. Yeah. So once Sri was talking like that, and after that we were sitting and having a private lunch, and he was then talking to some other people about complaining about conversion. So I said, isn't there a contradiction? Because if everything has got the same truth, then what's wrong if people get converted? He couldn't answer that. I said, you should be very happy if everybody becomes Christian, since it's all the same anyway, we don't have any problems left. We've gotten rid of the difference anxiety by converting. So you should actually go and convert every Hindu into Christian because you really believe that they're all the same. He was very shocked. Oh, no, I don't mean that. I said, then what is the difference? Either there is difference, which is worth protecting, then you should stop going around talking everything is same, or there isn't a difference because they're all different paths leading to the same, in which case don't complain about conversion. But you can't be a contradictory guy. Our leaders, political and religious, don't understand what is different. And the other extreme, which I'm also arguing against in this book, the other extreme is only my Arya Samaj is valid Even within Hinduism, you are no good. Or my Vishishta Advait is the correct one and your Advait is no good. And things like that. So on one extreme, you have such a finely defined difference that you have internal fragmentation and fighting. That's one extreme. And that criteria of difference we can't unify. The other extreme, we have so much common that we are also common with all the other faiths. Yeah? Then we have nothing to defend. This book is a project of 20 years to solve this riddle. What is the middle ground where there is commonality among the dharma, yeah, and difference with non-dharma? This is what this book is trying to solve.
You mentioned about Tibetan culture being assimilated into Chinese later on, maybe in the future. But do you think because will it really happen? Because Tibetan culture is very distinct, and that's why the Malinese Dalai Lama is fighting for autonomous Tibet and his struggle for a free Tibet or even an independent Tibet. So do you think Tibetan culture can go?
Okay, you asked the question once and then I'll answer it. You're repeating, or are you okay? You just okay. So you shouldn't repeat. So your question is, since Tibetan culture is so different from Chinese culture, will it get digested or will it remain separate? That's the question. So I will answer it. Okay, thank you. All the digested cultures are very different. Pagan culture is very different from Christianity. Yeah, pagan culture is very different from Christianity. Yoga is very incompatible with the Bible. It's very incompatible because you cannot have unity consciousness in Bible. So a predator takes parts which will fit and makes ornaments out of them, makes decorative things, assimilates certain symbols and principles. Whatever will fit is assimilated, and whatever is going to be threatening is rejected, put in a museum and rejected. So the fact that the deer's DNA cannot live inside the tiger because tiger will consider it toxic. A tiger cannot have deer DNA sitting inside it. It has to be broken down so there is no more DNA left and then reassembled into tiger DNA. So Tibetan civilization, as intact with its philosophy, with its language, cannot be accommodated within Chinese. It has to be broken down. The symbols have to be given new meaning. The history has to be reinterpreted and distorted and changed. The philosophical ideas some ideas can be absorbed into Taoism or Confucianism, they'll survive. Some ideas which cannot be assimilated have to be rejected. So the process of digestion is not the same thing as taking the whole thing, preserving it intact and making it part of you. That would be fine. Then it would not be destroyed. The process of digestion is a destruction and making it disappear and taking parts that you want and making them fit inside you. So the digestion of Tibetan culture will be, there's young Tibetans, next generation, they want to have IT jobs, they want to go to big cities. In Tibet, they're getting married to Chinese soldiers. So the next generation is being told that you are of Chinese origin. They're being raised on Mandarin, and the Tibetan monasteries are being downsized more into exotic tourism. And in a diaspora, which is living as a second-class citizen outside their home, can only last so long because they don't have the sustaining power. I mean, you can last, Dalai Lama is there, but what will happen after he's gone? It will become a little milder. So Tibetan culture, Tibetan civilization is not on a solid foundation without a separate home, without its own proper homeland, and it cannot just go on in this refugee status and an indefinite period on the mercy of somebody else trying to help it. So that's the point. And the fact that it is different is not going to guarantee its success. In fact, that's why they want to finish it off, because it is different and therefore it's a threat.
We should not bother about the Western universalism. But to me it looks like they imported from the Indian civilization all this equality of gender or democracy so we have the concept of unity in diversity. So, but why we should bother about this? Ultimately, world is in a flux. People are migrating and living together. Say, best example is US. So you have to find a solution to coexist for all the different types of people. Otherwise, there will be created, for example, in Britain and Europe, right now you have the idea of multiculturalism. Everybody is they are introducing things which are incompatible with the rest of the human values. So what I am telling you is, finally we have to have a common body or a knowledge where everybody can coexist, accepting common principles.
Okay.
If they are conforming with the Western universalism, what is the wrong? I mean, otherwise we cannot coexist. That's my point.
Yeah. So this is the argument that says Western universalism is the operating platform, and we have to be digested. We have no other choice. That's what it means. That's what it means. So it is the argument which says what's wrong. We will all become Americans, and we will all have BMWs, and we'll do well. And India will then advance, and we'll have GDP, and we'll become rich Americans. And
not in terms of material, but in terms of values, human values.
Whatever. But human values are not the same. Human values are not the same. You have to read this book to understand that dharmic values and Western universalism values are not the same. They are not the same. You may, on a superficial knowledge, you may say, well, they have equality, we have equality. It's not the same. The idea of equality is very different. The idea of feminine is very different. The idea of nature is a product, and you have conservation of nature because you'll run out of clean water, you'll run out of if the forests are not clean, it will be toxic. Whereas in our tradition, nature is divine, is living. The reason you respect nature is because it has its own rights, not because it is my product. So even environmentalism, the idea of dharma for environmentalism is different than the Western idea of why you need to have environmentalism. The idea of human rights is very different. So you need to read more about dharma, much more about dharma, to understand why values are different, what the values are. Most people have become so superficial in their understanding of their own dharma that they really don't even know what's different. And so if they don't even know what is different, see, this is the problem. You can't mobilize unless you truly understand what is different. And since most people are sort of walking around thinking everything is same, they bought into this idea that everything is same, and values are same, and these are all different paths to the same thing, and what is this? Jesus is a murti, if this is a murti, they're all the same. You have to really go deep into understanding why they are not the same. You see, so I'm very happy you asked the question, because I'm always looking for questions that are making a different point for me. And this is a very good question, because it shows a very typical, what I call a confused Hindu, who's genuinely convinced, not genuinely convinced, that religious paths lead to the same, we've all got similar values, and what is different, what is wrong. And it is this idea which leads to the digestion into Western universalism. This is the deer saying, what is wrong? If I live in the tiger's stomach, tiger is tough guy, I'll become part of the tiger's stomach. I'll run faster. And I'm this weak little deer, I'm no good. But when I become part of the tiger, I'll run faster. This sort of thing. So it's that sort of an argument that you're giving. And there is no quick soundbite response to it, but I want you to read seriously what the arguments in this book are on what is different. Each chapter explains one major point of difference. So by the time you read it, you will know, okay, whether I agree with this or that, I can't say they're the same. That point you have to appreciate.
And one more thing that causes the greatest confusion is, please resolve this in any way you want. Ekam sat, vipra bahuda vadanti. If truth is one, why people say many different ways? Why we say that is not correct? Hinduism is this, Christianity is this, Muslim is this, Jewish is this. But people take refuge in this Rigvedic statement. This is what Rigveda says. If Rigveda says this, it has got to be true. How do you reconcile with poor translation of Vedic terms?
No, let me, it's not even a question of translation. Truth is one. People say different. I got it, so may I answer it now? Okay. Truth is one, and you can say it differently. Does not mean that all truth claims are true. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Yeah. You have a lawyer who is arguing a case, and you have another lawyer who's arguing the opposite. Correct? He has a truth claim, and he has an opposite truth claim. They're both not true. They're making opposite claims. Our people spent hundreds of years arguing against alternative competing truth claims. The Vedantins arguing against Buddhists, the one kind of Vedantin arguing against another kind of Vedantin. The whole idea of darshana, the whole idea of purva paksha, the whole idea of debate is to assert an alternative proposition from what you are asserting. So obviously our people never said that both are valid. Okay. Now, truth claim 1 and truth claim 2 may be contradicting each other. Otherwise there would not be dharma and adharma. There would not be Ravana. There would not be the dharma of Hitler and the dharma of Bin Laden. Obviously all truth claims are not true. So the statement merely says that the truth can be expressed in many ways. But that doesn't mean that every claim is the same. You follow what I'm saying? You don't need any Sanskrit, you don't need a translation. It is 101 logic which is being violated when people say that the meaning of one truth can be said in many ways is that every single claim of everybody must be true. Do you follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So don't complicate it by bringing Sanskrit and translation into it. Show people that this is an illogical application. It's an illogical application. Yeah. Because one truth can be said in 50 ways. That doesn't mean that all the 5 million claims are all valid. Yeah. So truth is one, people call it by many names, absolutely. But there is also many falsehoods. All the claims are not necessarily true. Yeah? So there is a diagram here of truth claims which are true. So this truth can be expressed in many ways. All of them, that's all the Rig Veda is saying. This is another diagram of many false claims. They are not the same. The Rig Veda only says that all these are the same truth. It doesn't say that every claim is the same as it. Yeah? Nowhere does it say every statement uttered by anybody on any topic is the same. It doesn't say that. If it were to say that, it would make a joke out of all philosophy, all debate, all discussion, all viveka, all discrimination, all arguments of dharma and adharma. You would say Yudhishthira had his own truth, I have my truth, Ravan had his own truth. This is such a common confusion. I had Swami Shanta Atmanand, head of the Ramakrishna Mission in Delhi, giving me this argument. He's saying all truth, same, how can we? So I said, then in your mission, you cannot tell good life from a wrongful life. Suppose one of your swamis comes drunk on drugs, and he comes and he weird things in your ashram, and he says, Swamiji, truth is one, this is my truth. So what will you do? He said, no, we'll throw him out. I said, but then you have a way to discriminate. You have yam and niyam. You're making yam and niyam into a joke. If you are saying that whatever he does is fine, because he'll also chant this Rig Veda statement. So it took me 2.5 hours for a very learned Swami, for him to understand that he was misapplying the Vedic statement. That's how misguided and colonized and pervasive we are. The colonizer loves the colonized people who won't think for themselves. He can come up with any baloney and they will buy it because he can quote their own verse to them. Yeah? He can either tell them it's all mithya anyway, why are you worrying? I took your Kohinoor, I put it here. You don't need it because you are enlightened, you are otherworldly, I'm materialistic, you don't need it. And the idiot Hindu say, you guys are very good. You taught me something. Or he can say, you can accept my truth because truth is one after all. So this business of totally confusing our people has become very pervasive, I would say. I think we will stop, but I've really enjoyed this very lively discussion. I like the audience which raises good questions, and this is our Hindu way to debate and discuss, and I think every question that people have asked, I respect it, and particularly the ones that are contentious are very useful to me. I learn a lot from them. Thank you very much.